3 prisoners. 0. Court-martial documents. April 1945. Bavaria, Germany. James Walker folded a field order beside a muddy surrender road. The war was almost over. Columns of German soldiers moved west every hour. Most carried white cloth on rifle barrels. The execution detail had already been selected. 3 rifles waited outside the barn. The prisoners were still inside. The order sat on the desk. Unsigned. 2 hours. Walker checked the paper again. Then he checked the signature line again. Nothing. Rain hit the roof. Nobody touched the document. This is what Patton did. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the stories about World War II that official surrender reports left buried inside Third Army paperwork. James Walker, Cleveland, age 31. He'd been a military police lieutenant for 4 years. He'd seen looters, deserters, and German infiltrators. But he'd never seen an execution order prepared before a trial existed. The prisoners had been captured 6 miles south of Regensburg. 3 boys, ages 15, 16, and 17. All 3 wore black SS insignia, stitched onto Hitler Youth uniforms. One still carried a rifle sling across his shoulder. Another had dried blood on his left sleeve. The dead American scout had been found beside a drainage ditch at 05, 40 that morning. 1 bullet through the throat, 1 through the chest. His name was Corporal Daniel Reeves, 24 years old, Indiana National Guard before the war. The surrender corridor near the village had already processed more than 2,000 German troops in 3 days. Most surrendered without resistance. Some did not. Rumors moved through the camp by noon. The prisoners had fired after waving civilians forward on the road. 1 American jeep stopped. Then the shooting started. By 13:00. A captain from the provost section drafted an immediate execution order under anti-guerrilla authority. No hearing, no witness statements, no defense officer assigned. Walker counted the paperwork twice. 3 prisoner names, 1 dead scout, 0 court-martial documents prepared. The tent stayed quiet. The captain defended the decision in 1 sentence. SS fighters out of uniform don't get another chance. Other officers agreed. American patrols had already lost 11 men that week to hidden fire along surrender routes. 1 medic had been killed after treating a wounded German beside Amberg. Another patrol found wire stretched across a road at neck height. Nobody trusted late-war SS units anymore. But Walker kept staring at the ages typed beside the prisoner numbers. 15, 16, 17. The Hitler Youth execution order moved upward before sunset. Walker carried it to Colonel Robert Lansing at 3rd Army Rear Command near Regensburg. Lansing read the page once. Then he ordered the document forwarded higher immediately. Colonel Lansing had already processed 47 surrender disputes in April alone. Most involved stolen vehicles, hidden pistols, or false civilian papers. This was different. The prisoners were minors. That fact changed everything inside the command structure. Lansing checked the field regulation binder himself. Then he checked the attached order again. No tribunal authorization appeared anywhere on the page. The rain got heavier outside the tent. Robert Gaines, Philadelphia, age 42. He'd been a judge advocate officer for 11 years. He'd seen desertion cases, black market trials, and battlefield shootings. But he'd never seen 3 teenagers scheduled for execution before formal charges even existed. Gaines arrived just after 18:00. Mud covered the lower half of his boots. He carried 2 folders under one arm. The first contained the scout's death report. The second contained the execution authorization draft. Only the first folder was complete. Gaines counted 14 witness statements attached to the death investigation. The execution file had none. One sentence inside the draft troubled him most. Immediate sentence recommended due to SS affiliation. No trial date followed it. No court officer signature. No review notation from headquarters. The tent stayed silent. Gaines understood the political danger immediately. American troops had crossed deep into Bavaria by then. Camps were being discovered across Germany. Entire towns claimed they knew nothing. The hatred towards the SS inside the army had become personal by April 1945. Any officer delaying punishment risked appearing weak. Any officer approving execution without trial risked violating military law in the middle of a surrender campaign, watched by Allied command. That was the impossibility ceiling. No colonel wanted responsibility for either outcome. The prisoners themselves complicated matters further. One admitted firing toward the road. Another denied shooting anyone. The youngest cried only once, when an interpreter removed his belt before confinement. None had legal counsel. None had signed testimony. None had appeared before any tribunal. 3 teenage prisoners awaiting execution. 0 court-martial documents prepared. The numbers stayed in Gaines's head while he reread the order near midnight. Outside, the execution squad waited in a truck beside the fuel depot. 8 men, 3 rifles loaded, 1 medic smoking beside the rear wheel. Nobody spoke loudly near the barn anymore. At 06:20 the next morning, Gaines placed the unsigned order into a courier envelope marked for 3rd Army Headquarters. By that afternoon, it was on Patton's desk. What Patton did next would leave the execution order untouched on his desk while armed MPs waited outside the headquarters building. The paper stayed in front of him for nearly a minute. Patton read the first page, then the second. His thumb stopped beside the ages. 15, 16, 17. He set the report down beside a riding crop and a folded map of Bavaria. Nobody in the office moved. Rain struck the headquarters windows in short bursts. A courier stood beside the door, holding the return envelope. Patton looked toward Major Hobart Gay. 3 prisoners. No trial. Somebody wants this buried before sunset. Gay glanced at the final page. The scout was killed under surrender conditions, he said. Some officers will expect immediate retaliation. Patton looked back at the unsigned line. Nobody signs this. The room stayed quiet. One legal officer mentioned the risk immediately. If word spreads, he said, other SS prisoners may believe they can exploit delay procedures. Patton adjusted one glove slowly. They get a trial before they get a bullet. He picked up the envelope himself. Then he handed it back unopened. The signature line remained blank. The order returned to rear command before nightfall. Colonel Lansing opened the envelope beside 2 military police officers. The execution authorization remained inside exactly as before. Unsigned. The captain who drafted the order read the empty signature line twice. Then he placed the paper back on the table without speaking. Nobody assembled the firing squad outside the barn. The transport truck stayed running for nearly 20 minutes. 8 riflemen waited beside it in full rain gear. No commands came. One MP finally unloaded the rifles himself. The prisoners were transferred at 02:10 the next morning under armed escort toward a larger holding facility near Nuremberg. 3 new prisoner tags replaced the temporary field cards. A legal review officer arrived 6 hours later. The original execution order never left Lansing's possession again. 12 hours after Patton refused the signature. The prisoners were gone from the camp. 0 shots were fired. One unsigned document remained inside Third Army records. No officer received public punishment. No speech was given. No ceremony followed. Patton never mentioned the case during the evening briefing. He moved to the next report. The transfer convoy reached the larger detention center before dawn. 3 teenage prisoners entered formal processing instead of immediate execution. 2 interpreters were assigned that week. One Army legal clerk later added the missing witness records to the file. The execution order itself stayed inside a sealed command folder for the remainder of April 1945. Weeks later, Third Army legal officers tightened surrender route procedures across several holding camps in Bavaria. Field executions required documented review authority after that period, even in cases involving SS affiliation. Daniel Reeves never returned home. James Walker survived the war. He went home to Cleveland, Ohio in 1946. In 1972, he was interviewed for a regional veterans archive. He said, "I remember the rain on the truck canvas. Nobody talked while those boys were moved out." Walker died in 1988 at age 63. His interview notes remained inside a county military history collection. Today, many temporary surrender camps from Bavaria no longer exist. If you visit the area near Regensburg, you can still find preserved roads and rail corridors used during the final weeks of Third Army operations. Patton never mentioned it publicly. He never talked about it in his diary. Prisoners remain prisoners until the Army decides otherwise. The question never fully disappeared after the war. The scout had been killed during surrender conditions. Many American soldiers believed immediate execution would have protected future patrols. Others believed the law mattered most when anger was strongest. Would you have executed them immediately, or demanded a formal trial first? Let us know in the comments if this story stayed with you. The full Patton playlist is linked below. Every episode goes deeper into the decisions that shaped the war. There is one more decision from this period of the war that nobody talks about. It is in the playlist.